but I've got a couple of questions that I came up with, and one that one of our viewers came up with, although he hasn't joined us yet. So maybe I'll wait on that to see if he to
What are
see
we
if
doing?
he.
Are we doing remote stump the rigger today?
No, I didn't really look at it as that.
Oh,
I'd rather not,
okay.
but yeah, you're in the driver's seat as far as I'm concerned today. No, I was saying that there is yeah, there's a question that one of the guys came up with. I'll hold off on that one till to see if he actually joins us. Hi, Camille. Um, Before we get started, or while we're starting here, I just want to thank all of you uh, for the last 7 months or whatever it's been, because it's been great fun, and most of you have been around for most of them, proving that either you're enjoying what we're doing, you just bored silly and you had nothing better to do. Uh, Speaking for myself, I've had a lot of fun doing these, and I hope that they've been helpful. I'm not sure what I'm going to do next Wednesday, but I'll figure something out. And on
Well,
that,
I've got a topic for you there, Bill.
okay, what, David?
Uh, Swaging and doing connections on cable with swages.
Swaging. Do you want to talk about that now, or is that a topic that you want me to do a future?
I think that that'd be a great future one. I just spent on Monday. I spent an afternoon with the technical theater class at my local high school,
Right.
and the topic came up, and I said it's very important. Here are some of the considerations, and their teacher was looking at me as if I'd grown horns.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. You're right. We didn't get into that in this forum. It seemed like over the last couple of months, a number of the other people were doing it, the other trainers and things. So I tried not to duplicate other people's efforts. Um,
Chicago Firehouse is doing one right now, or this morning, one of the others.
yeah, yeah, I saw that one too. Um,
Bill, I sent you a quick email, and it was going to what David said. I don't know how many people are actually work in institutions or high schools or universities that are been on this, but we're working with students and teachers and volunteers, and we have to do a certain amount of it in house, and then we go out to someone like you or Ron. We used to have Ron here in Ottawa. But I guess my question is how do we respond to the students, the teachers, the volunteers that we're trying to impart some knowledge and safety training. How do other people deal with it? David was just saying the teacher looked at him like he had horns, but uh, it, I'm just throwing something out there to
right.
ask.
Right. Well, if you're talking, are you talking specifically about swaging or just more of a
Yeah,
general?
general rigging. I mean, we have a counterweight rigging, the
Mm-hmm.
double purchase counterweight rigging system. As I think I mentioned, it's an older one. We have a we're a sort of a split house of staff um, and volunteers. Um, and the staff have certain laws in Ontario that we have to follow.
Sure.
Volunteers, I always say to the volunteers, you have the same rights and responsibilities as a worker in the workplace. They don't always agree with me, but
Well,
I'm, and our maintenance, we do a training, we do training sessions, and our maintenance goes out to, I'm trying to think of the company in Montreal. But we're also in Ottawa, we're kind of, even though we have the National Arts Center 3 blocks away, we're kind of, Ontario is Toronto centric, if anybody's aware of Canada's geography. So everything happens in Toronto. Nothing happens here in Ottawa. So I have
It's
to go
okay.
to all or Toronto for.
I, I got to tell you, that's okay. Ottawa is one of my most favorite cities in the world. You know, I could sit in the pool hall on Elgin Street for for hours and hours and hours at a time. I hope it's still there.
Still there.
Yeah,
Bill
but
says in the summer it is his happiest place.
no, I like it in the winter too. Go ice skating on the river. Yeah. Tom, I mean, in terms of imparting knowledge and stuff, you can lead a horse to water, but you're not allowed to shoot them. There's plenty of information out there readily available
Yeah.
online. And to take it back to what David was talking about with swaging, there's information from the two major manufacturers, Nycopress being one of them. It's kind of the what is a brand name, but it's actually not the most popular one. The Loose Company with the Local Lock brand is the more popular because it's less expensive. But there's information. They've got information all over their websites. Nycopress has some information that I actually managed to force them to put up on their website a number of years ago after a rather contentious stump the rigor session at USITT. But the stuff's out there, and there are books. Jay Glaram's book, the third edition anyway, is still a really good, useful tool, especially for volunteers and students.
I've got to say, Bill, I do not like loose crimpers.
Okay.
I really prefer the Nycopress.
Okay. I that's why they make chocolate and vanilla ice cream, David.
Absolutely. I just found the loose ones are, to me, they seem a little more awkward to use.
Okay. I think you're getting I think you probably picked up are you right or left-handed?
Right-handed.
Yeah, you probably picked up the left-handed crimping tool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean it's that's certainly a matter of preference in terms of quality and lack of trouble, quality control. They're both the same. They both have excellent track records.
Not counting the legal aspect, how close are the gauges back and forth?
Dead on.
From one crimping tool from a loose tool to a Nycopress tool.
Yes.
They are not dead on. They are off, but it is, we're talking hundredths of an inch, kind of measurements, but they are not exact. The biggest problem between crimping tools, for my money anyway, is the fact that the jaw thickness is different from Nycopress to loose, which is why you're looking at mostly 4 crimps per sleeve from loose, and depending on which tool you're using, 3 crimps for Nycopress. Yeah, that's the big deal as far
Although
as.
I do like the loose sleeves.
Yeah, well, the loose sleeves are no different than the Nycopress sleeves. Other than Nycopress now puts their name on them. They stamp their name on them. They're both built to mil spec. They stopped making a commercial version. All the sleeves are built to a military specification, so they're exactly the same.
Yeah, but
they won't admit that. But you ask Carl behind, get him out from behind his desk, and he'll admit it.
Well, the price point on the loose ones is better than Nycopress, at least up here
and down here.
Oh, okay.
And down here. Were there any sessions that you were involved in, that you attended here, that you thought bear repeating, or maybe that you would want to see, a session on it in more detail or something? And yes, we know compression sleeves. We got that one already.
Performance flying.
Say it again.
Performer flying.
What? So we did basically 3.
Okay,
2.5.
I only got in on 2.
Right. 2.5. Who was the half?
Well, the third you're counting was the risk assessment one because we touched on
Yeah.
performer flying. So that I'd consider that a half.
Well, there was the one that you did with
Right.
Andy Schmitz.
Right.
There was one that Andy Schmitz did with
Ginger.
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 And there was the one way back in the beginning that Paul Sapsis
Oh,
did.
right. That's right. The Paul. Right. Paul.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
that's right.
Yeah,
So
that was the one I missed.
The big fancy stuff.
Yeah, the big fancy stuff, exactly.
Yeah.
But so if you're looking for more performer flying stuff, what are we looking for? Anything in particular, or let's just go play some more? Because that's kind of
go play some more with it, because I mean first of all, it's a fascinating subject, and it really seems to have the most variance, and the most variables.
Yeah. Anybody? Variables?
I would ask that if you can do it without necessarily showing favor at one or the other, but where to get specific hardware for performer flying, so that when I have the Chinese acrobats come in and I look at their gear and it's like, oh hell no. But I can have a stock in my store of swivels and the other things that I can as replacements. We have I was fortunate enough, we had a performer rigger, an aerial rigging specialist at Kent State Tuscarawas for a number of years. And, he had a collection, in his office that he managed to sell them while they were in town. So not only was their performance with us safe, but they were safe for going on down the road. And in exchange, they left their old crap with him so he could use it in classes and say, this is how you never, ever, ever want to suspend a person.
Let's hope that's all he did with it, right? Does anybody want to talk about
about the gear?
Where to get the gear?
I'll take a cut. Surprise, surprise.
Of course you will.
Yeah.
Of course I will.
What, 5%? Is that what I got to give you?
There you go. There's this company in Philadelphia. The thing about the gear for performer flying. So let's separate it between the stuff that is engineered and designed specifically for performer flying, and generally that stuff you can't go and buy off the shelf. It's made for specific gigs, for specific companies, for specific uses. And that's probably 5% of the market. The rest of the stuff is just stuff, just like all the rest of the rigging stuff. You want to, and if you're following the ANSI standards E1.43, you want to be sure that you're doing the things that you would do no matter what you're suspending in the air. Make sure it's strong enough. Make sure that you know it's strong enough, and make sure that it fits what you're trying to do with it. So using rated equipment that is suitable for the function, known suppliers, and it's the same suppliers. Most of the stuff, and now, Bill, you added Sapsis to your website, didn't you? You added Petzl to your website.
I did.
So now you're selling all the same stuff, but good tactical and rescue supply places, good rigging supply places, sometimes good marine supply places. All of them will have the stuff depending on what you're looking for. But none of it, or very little of it, is made for purpose. And so what you need to do is to be able to evaluate, yes, this product is fit for what I'm trying to do with it.
Something like that.
Something like that.
What about companies? What's a company that Fred is working with?
Circus Concepts.
Right.
And Circus Concepts, which is in Montreal, which kind of took the place of Barry Cordage, which was a seller and manufacturer of lots of stuff for Cirque and Cirque style things. Uh, and Circus Concepts is one of the good uh, uh, companies in the industry. They do two things. One of them is they resell stock stuff that you can buy anywhere, but it's good one-stop shopping. You want to get shackles that will fit. You can go there. The carabiners, swivels, all of those sorts of things that are the stock in trade. And they also design and manufacture and sell specific apparatus. So if you want to go out and buy a trapeze, Bill, I don't think you're selling trapezes on your site yet.
No.
But you can go to Circus Concepts or Aerial Animals, or Craig, help me out with some of the other companies that are now Aerial Essentials. There are a bunch of them that are appearing out now. Circus Gear. Craig, what are some of the others that are good?
I think you pretty much named them all. There was Aerial Empowerment, but I think they're gone. Uplift Active, I'm not going to recommend to anyone. So
but
So
let's-
for the rigging stuff, it's rigging stuff. For apparatus, that requires more in-depth consideration. And Roger is nodding and smiling, but Etsy and eBay are really great. No, wait a minute, that's not true.
I want to switch to. I got an intriguing question here from Scott Oliver. You've got a two-part question to follow up on fall rescue.
Yes,
What you got?
it was mentioned briefly in that session. So my question is, when the person falls and is attached to a horizontal lifeline that's where they're hanging from, how does the rescuer get there safely and stay tied in? The two options that I see, neither one appeal to me. One is to use the same lifeline, which has already been dynamically loaded and has somebody hanging from it. So you're going to jar any movement you do on that line is going to jar the victim. The other option was to crawl out and tie around the beam you're crawling on, which could delay the rescue operation in our particular venue by at least 5 minutes. So that's part one of the question.
Okay, we'll do them one at a time. Can I
think
do them?
so.
Do them one at a time or both together? And
Well,
if anybody knows what show that's a quote from, you will have I will be amazed. I'll tell you later. Scott, you're right. I mean, when you're doing a rescue, if nobody has planned this out, if nobody has taken into consideration how you're going to get the person down and what the aspects are going to be, then yeah, you're going to have to wing it as you go, and it may be one of those two scenarios. Ideally, the second, if you're forced into that, ideally the second one where you're wrapping the beam, or if you're walking a truss, you're leapfrogging with like a dual leg lanyard or something to get out onto the truss, out to the victim. That's the way you're going to have to do it. The horizontal lifeline, depending on the design of the horizontal lifeline, and they're getting much better these days. But for ones that have a lot of give to them, that's not gonna be available to you, because that'll be in a V shape with a victim hanging down at the bottom of that V, and that lifeline's just not going to be available to you except at the very end, and that's not going to do you a damn bit of good. Ideally, you have someone has thought about it and put in a system that will allow a rescuer to get out there in a safe and expedient way. Hang on, David. I want to see what number 2 is here.
I think you've answered number 2, but I'll throw the question out. So after the rescue has been successful and the show must go on and there's still points to hang on that beam from which she fell from, it seems like option 2 of crawling out and wrapping the beam is the better solution, even though that takes a little longer, but time isn't quite as critical in that scenario.
Right.
I'm
You
agreeing
started
with
off
Gordon.
you started off the question with the phrase that we're moving away from, that whole show must go on thing. Yeah, no, doesn't show. If it's going to put somebody at risk, there's no reason for the show to have to go on. But if there's a safe way, yeah, and wrapping the beam and going out is reasonably safe. If you fall off the beam, um, at least we have some practice getting up to that particular spot because somebody just fell off it a couple of minutes ago. You go off the beam too. Then after that, if you don't put a third person on that beam, you just got to stop. But yeah, I think that's where that's at. Ideally, people have put some thought into it, and there is an overhead beam that one could use with a beam trolley on it, for example, even if it's 15 feet in the air above the beam or truss that you're walking on. If it's got a beam trolley and a stinger on it where you can clip into it, walk out on the rescue beam and have this thing following you on a trolley, now you're good to go. And somebody has thought about it, and it hasn't cost an extra $3 million to do. Okay.
Yeah, I think that would be the catch in this particular venue, is the cost would be prohibitive for the venue manager.
Yeah, then they haven't done a study on the difference between cost of putting in the right gear and cost of killing somebody. They haven't balanced that out yet, and they need to do that. Their attorneys
Well, look how
will
long
figure
it took to get Lifelines.
Yeah, look how long it took to get harnesses.
Yeah.
But we got there, and we'll keep going, and we'll keep making it better and better, and it'll be safer, and people will adapt. If nothing else that this pandemic has done, it has shown the adaptability of humans, and we'll figure it out, because we have finally figured out that killing people is just not in our best interest. Mostly.
So backing up on your response to the Lifeline being in a V configuration, if the Lifeline has got enough intermediate supports where the Lifeline is still in a usable or somewhat usable height, what's the guidance on using the Lifeline before it's been recertified?
The guidance would be that you should never plan on doing that. You should plan on having an alternate to having to clip into that Lifeline. That being said, if they haven't planned on it, and if that's the only way to go and get the individual, there is no plan, and everybody's kind of trying to pull it out of their butt, now that somebody has actually fallen. You got to get the person down. You can't leave them up there. So, yeah, you're probably going to clip in. I wouldn't recommend it, but knowing what most, you see now, a reasonably well installed horizontal Lifeline is going to survive, that initial hit. It's the second one that you really worry about.
I'm wondering if we're talking about like a portable system with a black rope strung between two motors, or are we talking about a piece of aircraft cable strung between facility steel?
It's a permanent install. It's aircraft cable, quite long in length, but has a lot of intermediate supports.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not fixed supports; they're pass-throughs.
Yes, pass-throughs. I think it's a latchway system. What's
the distance between your beams in that direction, and what's the distance between your beams in the other direction?
The one direction is about 85 feet. The other is probably twice that,
Ah, okay.
which is
I
why
see your problem.
which is why a lot of intermediate supports.
Yes.
Mm.
Have you heard of things genies? Really, personnel lifts. They got them that'll do 180 feet now. Not with me in the bucket, but they've got them. I didn't. Yeah.
Um,
I'm done with that. Um, planning is the key here. And yes, Gordon.
So the other thing I've been looking at is when you're designing systems like this, is there a way to design a lowering mechanism into one end of the system? If the guy's at the bottom of a big V, can you make the V bigger and have him hit the ground, depending on the venue?
Softly.
There are
Um,
vertical fall arresters that now have slow releases on them,
mhm.
and I've been trying to get some purchased.
Right. Well, the issue with there are descent devices in existence now, and the price point is starting to come down. I would suggest that going after the problem in that direction is the wrong direction. And I'm gonna use my designs for horizontal lifelines as the example. We are trying, when we design a system like Scott was talking about with a steel cable, we try and design the system so that a rescue is not required. So we'll do a horizontal lifeline and we'll have intermediate points. We'll keep the span in between connection points or support points, if you will. We'll keep it to 30 feet or so. And we'll put a couple of trolley mounted SRDs, little mini SRDs on that line so that when somebody comes off the steel, they literally do not fall. Those things are so sensitive that they lock up relatively instantly. And worst case scenario, you're hanging next to that thing that you just fell off of, and it's probably at waist or shoulder, chest height, somewhere in your torso where you can get back on it. So we're trying to eliminate the need for a rescue. We are not eliminating the need for a rescue plan, however.
Designed for restraint, not designed for arrest.
Yeah, but we can't, and we look at it as a restraint system, but OSHA will, they're an investigator, an OSHA agent coming out and looking at something. Who knows what they're going to call it, because it's OSHA. What can I say?
Bill, can I just? You talked about having the plan. Can I just preach? You have to rehearse the plan too,
Oh
because
yeah,
otherwise it's not going to
you
get
may preach. You may preach. I think you're probably preaching to the choir here,
understood.
but yeah, the age old saying, no battle plan survives first contact with the enemy, which is why you rehearse and rehearse and rehearse so that you have as much muscle memory, if you will, to counteract the effects of everybody running around with their heads cut off because something actually really did happen, and oh my God. Craig Lewis, you have ETCP questions.
Yeah, so I've been working my way towards getting ETCP certified, and I've been saying that for years. So I'm a business owner. I'm the owner of an aerial studio here in Johnson City, and as a business owner, I'm finding it really difficult to get through the steps required for the ETCP because it's really hard for me to document all of the hours of rigging experience. It's not like I have a 40-hour job as a rigger, right? This is kind of a two-part question. My first question is to see if you guys have advice on as a business owner where I don't have a single contact that I don't have a boss that I can that can verify my experience hours, and then the second part of my question is that I'm also feeling like for what I do as a rigger, that the ETCP certification doesn't actually apply to it all that well. So I work with aerial studio owners pretty much exclusively. So the types of rigging that I do, at least in the sense of when I'm in, the kind of jobs where I'm in charge as the rigger, I'm throwing I-beams over, I'm throwing a span set over an I-beam and hanging a silk under it. I really don't rig to, if I'm working with box trussing or a fly system, I'm going to call someone else in. I wouldn't take charge on a job like that. So a lot of that stuff is out of, and I also understand, correct me if I'm wrong, the ETCP is explicitly does not certify you to hang people, which is exactly what I want to do. So I'm sort of not
Craig,
certain that it's the best direction to go in.
Right. Craig, are you familiar with my position, my situation, and my involvement with the ETCP?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Somebody want to clue him in? Well, let's put it this way, Craig. When you send in your application, and if somebody has at the admin, the ETCP administration, if one of them have a question about, your work history or something like that, they call somebody to get a verification, and they call me. All right. I was just everybody else has heard this, and I apologize, but I was one of the people who put the program together back in 2005. I sit on the council, and I'm in charge of the group that writes the arena exam. Okay, so I think you came to the right place is probably the accurate phrase here. Number one, briefly. You said the word rigging many, many times in that little discussion there. And every time you say rigging, that counts. We do not expect you to write down in a logbook that you were rigging a round sling, i.e. span set, but you were rigging a round sling, from 4 o'clock to 4:30 on a Wednesday afternoon. You're going to paint it with broad brush strokes. I worked in, you're a business owner. You're going to look at the work that you do on any given week, and you're going to average it out. And you're going to put that average down. You'll explain your general, job description. You're going to use a real wide brush. You're not going to use those 2 or 3 hair brushes, right? And ideally, the best thing you can do is make sure that you have a reference on that application that somebody from the office can call and say, so, this guy Craig, does he do it? And you'll have somebody who will back you up, okay? In terms of certification, ETCP doesn't certify anybody in the sense of we're not certifying me to go out and be a rigger or an arena rigger or a theater rigger or an aerialist rigger or whatever. We are certifying that you have a skill set within the discipline of arena rigging and theater rigging. And as we've talked on several conversations here today, the stuff is the stuff, and it's the same stuff. Aerial rigging, you bring in the extra, custom stuff, but all the other stuff is just the hardware stuff. So it fits, but there is no certification for aerialist rigging that I'm aware of. Jonathan, back me up here. In North America, that says you are a certified aerialist rigger.
Right.
Doesn't exist, and it's not going to happen within the ETCP because there's, at least at this point, it may change down the road, but at this point there's not enough of you to support the program because it's very, very, very excruciatingly expensive. It costs to bring out each discipline, arena, theater, electrical, temporary power, each one costs $250,000.
Wow.
Yep.
And that's because they're doing it right. I mean, and that's
Well,
because it is a legitimate third-party certification with standards, with the whole process to make sure that it's objective and verifiable, and not, Joe's rigging certification company, which you can go out and buy some of those, but that's not the same thing as ETCP.
right. Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Yes, follow up to that about ETCP.
Yeah.
I'm
Go-
curious if I'm curious if they've hired or filled the position of the certification manager yet that was posted long ago.
Right. They have not. They have, given the pandemic and everything else, they have postponed a decision. They have 3 people basically filling Meredith's shoes at this point, um, along with help from council members. So Beverly Inglesby, who's the editor of Protocol Magazine, Judy Datesman from the ETCP office, and Jane, I'm blanking on her last name, but she's the social media person at ESTA. They're all handling it. We have various committees and on the council, and the committee chairs. We wade in more often than we used to. I chair the recertification committee, so when there's a question, when somebody's trying to recertify and there's a question about their application, they call me. Camille, I'm reading your. Right. So I'm assuming everybody else has read that rather than read it again. Your plan is to keep all secondary equipment that allows the rescuer to go up and do what they need to do and be safely tied off at the same time. Is that a good synopsis of what you're doing?
Yeah, so our systems, because they are in kind of a bridge, you can walk on that surface without needing the fall protection. Really, the fall protection requirement is more when you're actually leaning out and doing a rescue in that situation. And obviously, you don't want to be attaching to that same horizontal lifeline for all of the reasons that were already discussed. So we just keep a secondary lanyard, as well as some other equipment and options. We do have a beam anchor that's also at one of our locations where we can have a beam anchor, just so that we have a variety of things that can be used in an actual rescue situation.
Right. And the catwalk that the people are on, they're up there initially because it's a lighting catwalk, and that's why somebody could take a header off of it initially, reaching out to deal with an instrument that's yoked out pretty far or something.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. David, yes, but we're not going to talk about it. Okay.
Can I get that from you later?
No, actually, you can't.
Oh, okay.
It's not my place.
All right. I do have one thing I want to throw out.
Out or up?
Okay. For rigging, for baskets, I've been noticing that there's been a couple of companies now have, for all of their baskets, like 5, 10, and 15 baskets, on one end, instead of a shackle, they now have a snap hook.
This pisses me off to no end. I wanted to do this 10 years ago and nobody would let me. It's a great idea.
I think it's absolutely freaking magic.
Yeah, and I think I'm just gonna have to bring it back. Sarah, make a note. This idea first started happening in Europe. There was a Dutch theater. Oh God, I can't remember which one it was, but they built a new arena, and they put all these points in. They put hundreds and hundreds of points permanently mounted in the building with a piece of steel, a sling, just as you say, eye on one end and a hook on the other end, and it made everybody's life so much easier. And frankly, when I saw it, and again, it was at least 10 years ago, maybe more now, but I saw it and went, what a great idea. And I brought it back here and I couldn't convince anybody. No one. So thank you for reminding me, David. we're gonna start. We're gonna get back into that, and we'll bring it out. And I'll give you
I'm
a nickel every time we sell one.
sure.
Okay.
I'm looking to try and have a bunch built here locally and rent them to the two big local venues that have a lot of stuff where we hang stuff from bridles and we have to basket round beams, because I can see it reducing the probability of dropped pins by 98%.
Yeah, agreed. Because the pin
Only
ain't
the
there.
only the only time that you've got to take a pin apart is if you got to shorten a span because your point's off.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Father Dave. You want
Talk
to talk
later
about
about it.
rigging? You want to talk about rigging arena shows in small markets? I'm assuming you're not talking about a bodega at the corner of Broadway and 49th Street, right?
Well, they have to have portable displays and fans in those bodegas also. So
when you say a small market, are you talking about a small venue or a secondary city or tertiary city?
the tertiary cities, the challenge that I've been seeing, and I know it's going to be worse coming out of COVID, is with the consolidation of the entertainment giants, AEG, Live Nation, things like that, when they have long jumps, they're starting to put major shows. I'm talking 75, 80, 100 point shows in tertiary markets.
Right.
And they don't have the time to do a jump set. They don't have time to do a pre-hang. And then small tertiary markets are expected to come up with 45 riggers because they still want to have most of the points with weight by the time they start going into meals, which is totally unrealistic.
Right.
And I was just using this opportunity, Bill, because we have many industry thinkers on this, is as we come out of COVID, to understand the concept of jump sets. I spent a lot of energy pre-COVID educating the promoter reps with the large concert promoters that motors is motors and steel is steel. And you can go ahead and rent locally or regionally jump sets to do a pre-rig, and then just leapfrog. And that was like a whole new thing to them.
Right.
And it also keeps your rig, so you don't have to come up with 45 riggers. You can do it with 20 riggers in a full 8-hour day.
Right.
So that's my appeal about safety and coming out of this. We need to start thinking about this, and this group is a way to get that message out. Thanks.
Yeah, and I would agree, and it's got to be cost effective. People don't think that way.
Yeah. Well,
but it's got to be. It can't be anything but.
Well, the challenge is, if I'm the local promoter and I'm already paying a production fee, and if I'm not using, that was the big, I had to like do circles and arrows and paragraphs on the back of each one. Is so because what the promoter was saying, well, I'm paying for that steel and motor package twice, and I'm going, yes, but instead of doing a chalk and talk at 5 a.m. and the riggers coming in at 6 a.m. and you're doing the whole thing on time and a half,
you're doing it on straight time with less people.
Exactly. But and even if you have to pay a vigorage to the tour rigger to send his assistant out, but I'm just hoping this group, because you guys are thought leaders in this, just Because coming out of COVID, it's going to be problems.
Yeah. Does anybody else have any feelings about what it's going to be like coming out of COVID? Other than batshit crazy?
Bad
Jack?
Jack Crazy pretty well covers it.
No, Jack's up.
Oh, I just said a mess. It's going to be a mess.
Yeah, I think so. We've lost a lot of people who have moved on to other markets and went, oh, I can be home by 7 o'clock every night, and they like that, and they're not coming back, folks. So it's going to be a challenge. Going to be a challenge.
I had a
yeah,
thought.
Stewie.
And this was something the day that I was driving home that I was furloughed, that I thought about this time last year. We were already having a problem having the wrong people in the wrong positions. And I have a feeling now that there's so many people available, anybody is going to take the gig, even for $1 an hour, just to get the gig. And there's not going to be anybody that can negotiate, their rates the way they want to, because they've got 2,000 people on the list they can call next who will gladly accept the position. And that's the part that scares me, is that there won't be any ability to negotiate, and they'll say, sorry, we've got $200 for the day. You want it or not? I got 1,000 people I can call next.
Yeah. I agree. It's going to be a mess, but we don't know what it looks like, and we just got to be cognizant of it. And as we move into it, we try and keep our heads on our shoulders.
Yeah,
that's the best thing we can do right now. Quick, Father Dave reminded me. You used a quote about 8x10s with arrows and paragraphs on the back. I'm assuming most people know what that's from, right? Okay, but when I said one at a time or both together, did anybody think about where that might be from?
That's
It's
from
from the
Firesign Theater, isn't it?
No. It's a legit show. Well, depends on your perspective of a legit show. It was the first show that I did ever, and I was just one of the chorus guys. It's from Little Abner.
Okay.
For what it's worth.
Yeah, right. You kind of look like an Okie from Muskogee. Yeah.
All right. The quick story. My brother got hired. This is in high school. My brother was cast as Little Abner because we're identical twins. And he was cast. He couldn't sing, he couldn't act, but they wanted him to do Little Abner solely because there's a scene where the government agent drinks the yokumberry tonic and bulks up like Little Abner, right? So they could do the scene and have the guy drink the stuff, fall back into the crowd, and then I would step out as the new, and we were, in those days, my brother and I really looked identical, much more than we do now. So they built a whole show around the fact that they had a pair of twins in the school in the student population.
Well, that's basically the artistic core of every David Copperfield illusion.
Right. Don't tell us anymore. We don't want to know. We like the illusion part. Hugh Hardiman, you've asked about rope, and we can. In future, we can talk about it. I will tell you that there will be a session in the New World Rigging Symposium. Andy, I don't remember what day our session is, but we're doing one. Both myself, Andy Schmitz, who's with us today, and Eric Rouse are doing it. And Andy and Eric have done one in the past for EPS, Eric's group. I don't know if they recorded that or not. But, there's stuff out there, and, that might be a good one to come back, when we do come back in the future. I love this question because you get a million different opinions. Thanks, Jack. Jack Miller asks, where's the line between mechanization and automation? I almost said automation, but I don't mean to do that. Mechanization and automation. Where is the line between the two?
Or is there?
I think
Or, yeah, is there a line between the two? I know where my line is, but anybody else want to? Chicken.
Wow.
Everybody's.
I'll take a
I'll,
stab.
I'll throw something out on the table.
Yeah.
So for me, in the world that mechanization really refers to what's the motive power, what is providing the oomph, and automation has to do with what's controlling that. And generally, if you could have a mechanized system with a hoist, if it's run from a joystick, let's say, that's not automated. Automated would be where there's a programmable cue system, a system where you can press go, and the machine is going to do something that's been predefined. For me, that's sort of the distinction. The problem is that in actual practice, in running a show, there sometimes the line's too sharp, and sometimes it's too soft in terms of who's doing what when, and that's a dance where it's really kind of has to be worked out in the action, the practical side. Andy, I see. It looks like he wants to.
No, Andy's being reserved today.
Oh, okay.
Well, my opinion, I'm kind of in the same boat with you. I do see that those two disciplines that used to be much further apart, they're coming together. You know, they're starting to merge together. You know, in the old days, I always kind of separated them by if I could push a button and release the button and something would still happen that was supposed to happen, it was programmed to happen. That's automation. If I had to push the button and hold on to it, that was the mechanized part of it. Because all I was doing was telling that machine to turn on, basically. In automation, I'm telling it, all right, turn on, and now I want you to do A, B, and C.
But now on the automation, you got to keep holding down another button beyond the one that started the cue.
Yeah, you got a dead man switch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They want to make sure you're still there.
Right. The first case of mechanization turned into automation that I saw was at the Palladium nightclub in 1986, maybe 86, 87, where we had put in this winch system. And, you know, it was all push button stuff. We didn't have fancy schmancy controls back in those days. And there was a box that was probably about 2 feet by 2 feet that had a bunch of push buttons and stuff in it. And, you know, if you wanted these guys to move, you pushed and you held the button down. You wanted these guys to go, you pushed and held the button. If you wanted the third thing to happen, you had to get a buddy to come over and push that other button and make that happen at the same time. Well, my buddy Martin, I'm not going to give you his last name, but my buddy Martin, who was an operator back in those days at the Palladium, came in with a piece of plywood, 2 foot by 2 foot piece of 3/4 ply with other little pieces of plywood glued to one side of it so that you could put the thing on top of the control box. It would push all the go buttons, and he put a counterweight on top of it, and then he left. Yeah, that was automation. Yeah, nah, not so good.
Years ago, I was the automation for a turntable, so that's like we didn't have fancy, mechanisms.
Right.
Stagehands moving a turntable. Hopefully, they don't step on our hands.
Right. New rigging standards. David, you're asking about new rigging standards that ESTA has in the works. I'm going to be embarrassed to tell you I'm really not sure what new ones we have. Just yesterday, or maybe it was this morning. I got up really early this morning, unfortunately. But we have been, because we've been writing standards for 25 years, and because ANSI requires that we at least review each standard that we write every 5 years. We're kind of in a cycle now where we're not writing as many new standards, but we're going back and reviewing old ones. And the fall arrest, the temporary fall arrest on a temporary system, on a trust kind of thing. That one we just approved to become a new. We revised it, went through the process, and it's been approved by the rigging working group, and now it has to go through the steps up to ANSI for approval. So probably within 6 months, that one will come around and be a new standard, but it's a revision of an existing one. And there's another one for static rigging points that is in the same process. And there's probably a couple more. Apparently I'm going through puberty again. But there's a couple more, but I couldn't tell you what they are right off the top of my head.
Well, the performer rigging standard is in process now as well.
Performer flying.
Performer flying, yes.
Right. Yes, it's being revised, and you're on the task group, right, Jonathan?
So is Stuart.
Right. I let Stuart on. Okay. All right. So Camille's asking about the automated systems replacing counterweight in theaters, and specifically where they're putting the operator's panel, i.e. mounting it on a wall, which is an excellent observation, Camille. Because you're right, it raises some sightline concerns. Motorized systems in theaters is the reality of our lives, and it is unfortunately not, in my opinion anyway, not being treated with the respect that it needs. Systems are being installed that are inaccessible, so that you can't access them after they've been, you can't get to them after they've been installed. It's, you can't service them because you can't physically get there. They put the system in when the building was under construction, and the only way to get there, to maintain it, to do an hour's worth of work, is to spend 3 days building, several, $10,000 worth of scaffolding to get up to it. That's kind of like buying a new car and then welding the hood shut. It just doesn't make any sense to me. But I know I'm working on it through my channels within the consulting world, trying to get that squared away, and we all need to be aware of it. But it's here to stay, because counterweight systems have always had a reputation of being somewhat unsafe, and in an untrained market, that's true. And when you kill a high school kid, it's going to get at least some significant local attention.
Bill, are you going to be working on that at Natiac? Oh, what's Natiac?
What's Natiac? I don't know. I don't know what. I'm not in a position to start talking about sessions. It's a very interesting coincidence, Jonathan. But Natiac is a North American Theater Engineering and Architecture Conference, which I'm the director, and that will be happening in July. And the dates escape me, but I have one of my colleagues who's co-producer or, works on the thing with me, and hopefully she'll tell me what the dates are on it. It will be virtual, and I'll have press releases coming out within the next couple of weeks.
Bill, that's July 20th through 22nd.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, look, and we get a website too. Thank you. Father Dave brought up something during a phone conversation the other day that I want to bring about. I'm not sure how many people here have their own theater, but I think a lot of consideration will need to be will need to happen about the gear and what's happened to the gear over a year or more, probably a year and a half by the time we're done, to that gear that before you get started, what do you got to do to get it back into shape? And if I may, the one that you brought up to me, which was brilliant, and I wouldn't have thought about it on my own, I don't think. All theaters, and Father Dave is you're these days your experience is more in a Broadway house or a Broadway touring house. It's got tons of electrical cable all over the place, right? And from lights to sound and audio and all over the way, and we hide it. And we hide it in out of the way places because we don't want to see it and we don't want to trip over it. So it goes in ceilings, it goes in alcoves, it goes up in the attic, over the house, up in the dome area, all of that stuff. And it's been sitting there for a year. And as you pointed out to me, there's nobody in there taking care of the residents. And the residents are the little fairy creatures, all the critters running around. And again, he said, they haven't had their normal food supply. I mean, they basically living off popcorn and M&Ms that the audience drops on the floor, right? And they haven't had that. So now they're looking at other sources of food, and electrical cables are a great source.
Yeah, I know that the Nederlanders in a lot of the Broadway theaters are redoubling their exterminators. So that's the situation. Because every building, it's not just the Broadway theaters, any theater that's got a front of house snake in a plenum chamber has got to be looked at before we start up again.
Right.
Because the rats, my last tour was Phantom of the Opera, and in the middle of the second Blair scene, we were at the Masonic in Detroit, and the candle package became Phantom La Disco, because the candle did all of this and went for shit. And after sussing out 3 8-hour workdays of trying to fix this, a rat had gotten into the snake in the plenum and chewed through an AMX circuit. So
right.
But it's going to be interesting when we come back. We're talking at the IA is creating a protocol for our locals to do a check before they reopen.
Cool. Yeah. Release the cats. We are not bringing back that musical for anybody. No.
No. I'd rather do an ice show than fucking cats. Excuse my French.
Right.
I'll go out with an ice show. A Sesame Street show.
I think Calista would agree with you.
Yeah, most of us would.
Mm.
So the guy who asked me, unless the guy who just got on, and it's a phone number, so I don't have a name to go on it. But I was asked in an email of a question that I figured I would answer for him. I'll do it anyway. He wants to know if the force and tension applied by a chain hoist to a bridle is taken into account before lifting a specific load. Taking into account force of gravity so as to not exceed the rated load capacity of the components of that bridle. And while I think people will think about this as a pretty simplistic question and go, yeah, of course they take it into consideration. But I'm wondering how many people really do when they start looking at their plot and they have X amount of gear to hang. Do they look at the gear that they're hanging and do that calculation? Or do they include the weight of the hoist, the weight of the truss? Or do they just, do they have a percentage that they just
put a
throw
whole
out?
bunch of clamps in there? Yeah. We need to determine what the actual number of clamps that we need is. Yeah. and then I can count the clamps that I have collected and see if that's enough or if I need to get some more.
I think somebody's talking. Is that somebody talking on the phone, or is that somebody responding to my thing? Yep. Okay. It was. We'll let that go. The only, when we're figuring out points on a show, if it's a legit theater, if it's a traditional space, we got a real good idea already of how much weight we're allowed to carry in the building on an overall basis and a point basis. And, in most buildings, it's really hard to get to an overload condition on either one of those cases. So we don't, there's a percentage we get. Oh, I'm hanging 300 pounds here. That's going to put, 400 pounds of force there and another 275 pounds of force there. Oh, we're good. And we don't include the weight of the hoist or the weight of the truss, because we know we've got plenty of headroom. That was not the case when we hung the Phoenix at St. John's Cathedral, because we were right at tolerance levels. We didn't have percentage points of headroom. We had no headroom. So we had to figure out everything. But I think that, the question becomes more of what are you where are you working in? Are you in a familiar room, and are you more, I don't want to say lackadaisical, but more comfortable, more relaxed about the way you figure out your point loads? And can that get you into trouble? Usually if it gets you into trouble, we're going to know about it, probably before the dust is settled. But we haven't had have we had a really significant catastrophic failure in recent history? I mean, I know we had Radiohead and we had Indiana State Fair. I don't think there's, been other ones. Indiana State Fair was a weather-related thing. I'm thinking more in terms of mechanical-related catastrophic failure.
What was that video screen that crashed in Las Vegas about 4 years
Oh,
ago?
yeah, that one.
Yeah.
That was, I don't know what it was, but I know it's expensive. It's very, very expensive. And I don't know that they ever announced or did a real full investigation. Nobody was injured, fortunately, but that also kind of cuts back. They cut back on the investigation part of it when that happens. But it looked to me like they had a what we call a glider, one of those adjustable Verlinks or whatever whatever brand they go by, that took weight when it wasn't supposed to take weight, that they hadn't anticipated that was going to take weight, and when it did, it failed. Back to the chat here. Again, Camille's comment about people being out of practice. We're going to have to watch our backs, folks, all of us, and we're going to have to watch everybody else's back, because nobody's used to this. We're going to be back at work, and there are going to be people who are going to forget which way a shackle is up, and it's going to be a challenge, because the producers and the high-end folks are going to be going like gangbusters, because they got to make their nut, and they haven't been doing that for a year, and now they have an opportunity to do it, and they're going to go like hell. We have to protect ourselves. We have to protect our fellow workers. It's going to be challenging, and we're going to have a lot of newbies. We're going to have entry-level people, probably in situations in places in places where in jobs that they shouldn't be in yet, that they're not ready to be in, but they didn't have anybody to fill it, so they get pulled, and here, you to go do that. Joel Schumann's comment. I lost it. Where'd it go? Oh, there it is. Recommended monthly, yearly maintenance from the manuals. It's based on time, not usage. That's usually accurate. I haven't, I've asked a particular chain hoist manufacturer, I'm not going to tell you who, but I've asked one if they have any thoughts on changing their annual inspection maintenance requirement for their hoists, because all of their hoists have been sitting on the ground or hanging, doing nothing for over a year now. And they haven't responded to that inquiry yet, but I did just ask it last week. So, you know, we'll see if they choose to respond to it. I don't know if they will or not, but I think from a legal standpoint, I think a manufacturer is going to always fall back to, we told you to do it annually, do it annually. We don't care if you didn't use it for a whole year. You still have to maintain it annually. I think that that's probably going to be the way it is. And I wouldn't argue with that. You know, I mean, getting a chain hoist inspected and maintained, it's going to cost you a few $100s, yeah, and it's going to cost some downtime if you've got a small inventory. But you know, having to deal with a failure in a hoist of any type, either you know, a mechanical one that screws up your show, and you have to shut the show down and give everybody their money back, or a catastrophic failure, that maintenance is going to be cheap insurance. Yeah. Mr. Young says he's scared from his own point of view via stamina, working the 10 to 12 hour day. Well, yeah, we're all out of shape. Damn. You know, I've been eating 3 squares a day. I mean, holy smokes. But you're right. None of us are in shape. You know, we may have tried to stay in shape, but it's not the same as being out there working, you know, and, you know, and I also would hope that maybe we can take this opportunity to look at it. And I know in some places they are looking at it, to start thinking about how we work, and maybe using this gap as an opportunity to start thinking about changing that culture a little bit. You know, the show does not have to go on. It'd be really nice if it did, and we want to do everything we can within reason. And within reason is the thing that we have to start, you know, entertaining a little bit more often, in my opinion. How we doing here? Anybody? Yeah, working in masks is just no fun at all. No fun at all. New musical, Tim. Oh, he left it this time. No, you're still here. I like that, Tim. The new musical, Rats. Yeah, works for me. It would start off by a bunch of rats chasing the cats off stage left and out of the building. That would be the opening number. That would work. I don't.
We wouldn't just be redoing Nutcracker.
Say that again.
It wouldn't just be redoing Nutcracker if we did that.
Yeah, probably, but that's okay. Anybody else have anything else? It's 3:18, so we are coming up on the official end of the official last Uncle Bill's seminar for a while. Happy to entertain other thoughts and views here. I'm kind of out of the questions that I was thinking about. Oh, I did have one more. Sorry. You know, I think that, I guess where I worry about the theater industry in particular is on the regional level, how well regional theaters will be able to come back. I don't know how many of you are involved in, you know, local regional theaters, but, you know, nobody's made any money for last year, and it's going to be a while before they start making any kind of money again. I wonder what that's going to look like. Are we going to start seeing Nutcracker in August just because they need to trot out the moneymaker so that they have something in the kitty, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, something to think.
Bill,
Yeah.
we've had some informal discussions with the Lord Circuit,
Mm-hmm.
and they're sucking, other than the Goodmans and the ACTs and people like that. It's a very scary landscape, because it's analogous to what we're going on with the Med Opera right now. Is those operations, by their baked in business plan, 50% of the stuff, their income is donations. And donations are down, and you don't get donations to a dark house.
Right.
So when we come back, the demand's going to be huge, and there's a lot of pent up cash out there in our traditional markets, our audience. But some of the employers have been really great in sharing the paycheck protection money, and some of our employers have not, and have approached our local unions for givebacks. And the first thing we're going to ask them is, show me where the paycheck protection money went.
Right.
And if it wasn't shared with the brothers and sisters in the back of the house, it's like, it's going to be interesting.
Right. Yeah, we're in for a lot of challenges. No question about it. But at the end of the day, if we keep our wits about us, and we try and learn from some of the things that have happened over the last year and change, I think ultimately we'll come out stronger for it. One would hope. Okay. And on that note, I think we will wrap it up, folks. Once again, I really want to thank you all for your support over the last 7 months. It's been great fun. We will be back at some point. I don't know when. I have several projects, not the least of which the New World Rigging Symposium coming up in April, and my conference coming up in July, that I have got to pay attention to. And I have this day job thing, this rigging company that I need to at least check in on every once in a while. And as things start to open up again, I have to check in, and I have to be more involved than I have been of late. So thank you. We have certainly talked enough about rigging that those of you who are so inclined, let me know, and I'll send off the recertification credit notice to the ETCP people. Okay. And thanks again, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Bill and Sarah, this has been great. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Sarah. Bye-bye.
Take care, y'all.
Yeah. Thank you, Bill.
Hey, Bill, quick question.
Yeah.
You've mentioned the ETCP credits. My understanding is that are those just for renewal, or are those they're not for working towards the certification? Okay.
No, not for the original certification. Those are recertification credits. You have to renew every 5 years.
Yeah. Okay. I was just making sure I understood that correctly. That's what I thought.
Craig, if you want, give me a holler. We can talk about the ETCP stuff too offline.
Oh, okay, that'd be great.
Because I know your situation.
Okay, well, I appreciate it. Yeah, I'll take you up on that. I got to run right now, but yeah, I'll get in touch with you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Thanks again, guys. Take care. Stu, I'll be in touch with you next couple of days. I don't have much info for you, but I'll bring you up to speed. But
okay,
actually,
no problem.
I'll call you after this.
Okay.
I got a couple of minutes.
All right, bud.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you all. Take care. Stay safe out there. And